All right, what up, y'all? Let's get straight to it. 5 tips on how to gain more discipline. So I get this question a lot from clients, from team members, and even friends and family. You know what I'm saying? I get a lot of admiration from people around me like, yo, Reg, you're so disciplined. I don't know how you stay so disciplined, right? So these are some things that I was brainstorming on. And I'm not going to say these are the only 5 components to being disciplined for me personally or just in general, but these are things that like the first things that came to mind. So the first one is definitely a big key to staying disciplined is overcoming your obstacles. So life is always going to be lifing, right? And a lot of times when things happen, people look at it as a sign to like, all right, this is proof that I need to stop, I need to quit, I need to go do something else. I see it a lot of times with my business. People will, hit a roadblock where they're not growing their business. Maybe they've lost people that, on their team that they were very close to, that they saw them doing the business with for a very long time, and circumstances change. And then they look at it like, that's a reason for me to quit. That's a sign that this isn't for me. And those circumstances are like a fork in the road where you could go left or you could go right, right? You could quit or you could keep going. So you got to find a way to overcome your obstacles. And the way that you overcome your obstacles is you just got to fucking keep going. Like there's no way around it. You know what I'm saying? And it's going to be tough, but that's what separates I'd say it's probably 10% of people that keep going once they hit a roadblock. A lot of people, once they hit a roadblock, they stop. It's no different. I heard a stat that said, I think about 30% of people quit their New Year's resolution after a week, and then the other 30% quit after the first month. So we talking about first week of January, 30 people have already quit. Once they grab that first donut and they feel like they failed, they're like, oh, it's not for me. I can't lose weight. And then after the first month of January, right, the first month of the year, another 30% of people have quit because they probably hit that roadblock, right? But the remaining 30-40% of people that do make their resolutions happen is because they hit those roadblocks, right? They might have overate, they might have skipped the workout, they might have been sore, they might have been getting laughed at by their family. So many different things. They might have gotten an injury, they might have, had to travel for work and been thrown off of their routine. But whatever roadblocks they faced, they still say, yo, fuck it, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna rock it out, right? And that's what it takes. That's what's gonna get you to your goal, because it's not gonna be, everybody thinks it's like this smooth road, right? Where it's just like monotone, it's like no ups and downs, there's no failures, and that's not the truth. It's actually it's the opposite. It's like you got ups and downs, you got trial and error, you got failure, you got frustration, you got triumph, you got everything, and in between. So you just gotta keep going. You just gotta keep one foot in front of the other, and you gotta have that attitude of, I love the quote where it says like, yo, you're either gonna find me at the top of the mountain or you're gonna find me dead on the side, but I'm not turning around. I'm not quitting. And that's the mindset that you gotta have when you're facing those obstacles, to overcome them, right? So that's the first one for discipline. It's like you gotta overcome your obstacles, right? It's just staying locked in no matter what. Like no matter what, you're locked in, right? Number two, you got to have routines, right? And I always hear people talk about morning routines, right? Whether you wake up at 5, you wake up at 6. I think the average person wakes up at 7 o'clock. It really don't matter what time you wake up. It's about what makes sense for your lifestyle, right? What makes sense for you may not make sense for me, and vice versa, but you got to do what's best for you, right? But you do want to get up early enough where you could get ahead of the curve and just build some momentum for yourself for the day, right? You want to set yourself up with a morning routine that's going to have you winning, and just really stack up some wins to get your confidence up, right? To get your morale up, to get your energy up, right? Your vibration up, right? So whatever the things that you like to do, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what the perfect morning routine is, because again, we're all different. Some people like to pray, some people like to meditate, some people like to work out first thing in the morning, some people love eating breakfast. Some people like to fast from breakfast and not eat their first meal until 1 o'clock, right? There's so many different morning routines, so many different styles. you want to find a routine that works best for you. And one thing that I've noticed too is your routine is going to change throughout the years. So I'm a 40-year-old male right now, right? Back when I was 35, or even let's say 30, right? I had a different morning routine because what? I was single and I had no children. Now I have a wife, I have a daughter, right? Live with my mother-in-law as well. So my morning looks totally different than it did 10 years ago. And it's probably going to look totally different in another 10 years, right? But either way, I'm going to have a morning routine. And then you want to complement that with an evening routine, right? Because your evening routine sets up your sleep, and your sleep sets up your morning. It's like a cycle, right? So a lot of times before, I would have a super strong morning routine, but I didn't have a strong evening routine. So sometimes I would get to bed on time, sometimes I would get to bed late, or I would go into sleep just not setting myself up the best, and I wouldn't have the best night of rest, and that would affect my morning. So now if you have that morning and that evening routine, it builds momentum on both sides of the day, and that's how you really build momentum. So you want to set up, again, an evening routine that's going to work for you, right? What are things that allow you to relax your mind, to relax your heart, to relax your body, right? Because you are going into the state of sleep, right? So you want to make sure that your body is as relaxed as possible so that you can have that deep, restful sleep. So when you wake up in the morning, you ready to fucking go. You ready to like conquer the world, right? So you want to have those routines in place, whether it's one thing that sets you up for a great night, 2 or 3 things. I wouldn't make it 5, 10 things every morning or every evening, because you want to keep it simple. Simplicity leads to consistency. Again, simplicity leads to consistency. So the more simple that you keep your routine, the more simple that you keep your habits, the more consistent you're going to be with those habits, right? So that's one thing I see a lot of people get tripped on, is just being too complex with stuff. And if you're too complicated with it, when circumstances are a little tougher, you're just going to fall off. That's just how it works. That's what I've noticed on my journey, right? The next thing with discipline is your standards, right? So what are your standards, right? I have a certain weight standard. I weighed 190 pounds when I was in high school, my senior year. So my standard weight is 190 pounds. I didn't create a new standard because, I have a family now and I'm older and stuff like that. It's like, no, I felt great at 190. You know what I'm saying? I look great at 190, right? I noticed my performance on the basketball court at 190. So that's the standard, right? So what standard have you created for yourself when it comes to your health, right? If you have a business or if you have a career, what are your standards, right? What do you tell yourself? Like, yo, no matter what, on my worst day, on my worst month, on my worst year, this is my baseline. I don't let myself go below this. And that's what happens with a lot of people. They just don't have standards for themselves. So they let themselves go. You see the same guy that might have weighed 180 in high school, right? But that wasn't his standard. So he got to 190, 200, 220, 250, right? And he let himself go, right? But it really was, he didn't have a standard set for himself where he told himself, nah, no matter what happens, I'm going to weigh 180. And yeah, I'm a human being. I may gain some weight throughout the year, right? I may enjoy the holidays a little too much, and I may gain 10 pounds from traveling and this, that, and the other. But once I see that scale get to 190, I'm like, all right, let me get back up in the lab. Let me get back on eating right. Let me get back on drinking more water. Let me get right on in the gym. And I'm going to get myself back to 180 because that's my standard. So that's a discipline, because you're literally aware of where you are in your life, right? And you're telling yourself, like, no mas, like, enough is enough. When you see certain standards that you set for yourself, and people around you notice your standards too, and they respect it. You know what I'm saying? So, but figure out what your standards are, and it could go for any area of your life. Like we talked about business, we talked about health. It could go for your relationship or your marriage, right? You tell yourself the standard is, 1 date night a week, 1 date night a month, right? Or I know a friend who has a standard of, we don't go to bed angry at each other, right? That's bad energy. That's poor energy. That's poor communication. So that's his standard. So It's like whatever and it takes, again, discipline to enforce the standards, because you could say, well, my standard is XYZ, but then when it comes time to actually enforce that standard, you could say, oh, I don't feel like it. But that's exactly when it's the time for discipline, because the standard is what you set it to. And when it's time to be held accountable, hold yourself accountable to that standard, you got to actually fucking do it. You can't just say that's your standard and then let it slide, because if you let it slide, that's not actually your standard. That's what shows you what truly your standards are. Like, even with me and my wife, there are times where, let's say we're bumping heads and stuff like that, which part of a healthy marriage is bumping heads, right? You have opinions, she has opinions, right? You're gonna bump heads sometimes, but I make sure that, I apologize first, even if I know I'm right. Even if I know I'm right, because a standard of mine is that, we're on the same team. I don't want to walk around here mad for hours and days and weeks. Like, that's a waste of time, right? We're on the same team. That's the standard of mine. So I'm willing to put my ego to the side, my pride to the side for the benefit of the team, right? So that's a personal standard of mine that I don't even need to tell her that's a standard of mine, right? Because that's something on how I operate, right? But again, standards are going to help you with your discipline, but only if you actually enforce it and hold yourself accountable when that standard is being challenged, right? Next, your identity, right, is a big part of how you gain discipline, right? So if you identify yourself as someone who is overweight, right, it's going to be hard for you to have discipline. If you identify yourself with somebody as somebody who's, broke or unsuccessful, it's going to be hard for yourself to have and maintain discipline. So you got to be careful with how you identify yourself. Do you identify yourself as someone who lives a healthy lifestyle? Do you identify yourself as someone who's good with money? Do you identify yourself with someone who attracts great relationships? Like, what do you identify yourself at? And know that you could change that at any point, right? At any point you decide to, you can literally have a change in your perspective, a change in your mindset, and tell yourself, you know what, this is how I see myself. This is how I operate. This is who I am. This is what I deserve out of life, right? And literally identify yourself as that, right? But again, if you identify yourself as someone who's overweight, when it's time to, be disciplined, but, your coworker brings in donuts and another coworker brings in pizza, the mindset you tell yourself is, well, I'm overweight, I'm lazy. I hear a lot of people say that too. I'm lazy. I'm a lazy fuck. I'm a lazy this, that, and the other. And it's like, how do you identify yourself as that? Because that is your self-identity. Now, when situations for discipline come up, you don't have a chance, because you already told yourself that you're a lazy fuck. You already tell yourself that you're fat. You already tell yourself that you always slip up. You let those words come out your mouth, and the mouth is just an indication of what's in your heart, which is your belief system, right? Which is your identity, right? So it's just so powerful. I'm going to just leave it at that, man. It's so, so powerful how you see yourself, how you identify yourself. And then lastly, fifth tip for gaining discipline is just having a proper strategy, because there's been times, even for myself, I remember, wanting to lose weight, and, it would be the end of the night, and, I'm following my plan. And then at the end of the night, I'm eating a bunch of food, right? I'm scarfing down all this food at the end of the night. And it wasn't that I didn't have discipline, right? But I didn't have the proper strategy, right? So I wasn't actually eating enough protein. I wasn't eating enough of the macronutrients that I needed to make my goal happen. So I was trying to be disciplined, right? But your body's only gonna let you push it enough until the point where it has to preserve itself, right? The body's not gonna let you hurt it to the point where you just damage it, right? So if you're not eating enough, right, the body's going to let you go, but so long until a certain point of the day or the night, it's going to be like, yo, fuck this. You're not giving me enough food. I'm going to just like go at it and catch up for what you didn't give me earlier, right? For what I actually need. So when you have the proper strategy, it's actually easier to be disciplined because now you're not having to white knuckle it. Now you're not having to rely on willpower, right? Because you have the proper strategy, the amount of discipline that you was trying to put in before is actually not necessary because you're following the right plan. So I actually needed to eat more macronutrients. I actually needed to drink a lot more water as well. I needed to keep myself more active instead of just, watching TV and being lazy and just sitting on my ass. I needed to like be engaged. It wasn't about working out all the time, but just keeping my mind engaged, keeping myself focused on my purpose and just staying locked in, man. So like I said, those are 5 things that for me, I know for sure have helped me with discipline throughout the years. And I've been living this journey for some time, man. And I'm not a finished product. I definitely am working even right now on taking my discipline to another level because like we always hear, there's levels to this shit. And everybody's on a different journey, right? Everybody's on different levels. And part of the fun in life is growing the level of discipline and the level of self-mastery that you have. You know what I'm saying? It's like Jim Rohn says, a tree is always going to keep trying to grow to the max of its capacity. And that's how I am. I'm always trying to figure out how can I keep growing? How can I keep getting better? So when it comes to discipline, I'm like, all right, discipline isn't the sexiest thing, right? It's not the most, thing at the top of most people's lists, when they say what they want out of life, right? But I just look at it as more of that. It's more spiritual than anything. It's not something that you could see, but best believe people can feel you if you're a disciplined individual, right? I've had people literally walk up to me in an airport and tell me how strong my energy is. And I believe a big part of that is because what I do behind the scenes when people aren't looking, how disciplined I am. And I believe that people that are big on energy, which we all are, right? They can sense that, they can pick up on that, and they respect that shit, man. So that's what I got for y'all today, man. Definitely hope that it added value. Let's stay locked in. Definitely drop me any comments for any topics that y'all want me to cover, talk more about, and really just break down my experiences. I'm only going to talk about things that I've experienced. If there's something that I haven't done or, am on that path right now that I don't speak on it, that's just not how I operate. And as always, man, I'm always looking to help more people. So I'll drop my links in my bio. Let's get it, man. I'll talk to y'all soon. Let's go.